Welcome everyone to the webinar today on today's top diet trends. My name is Jill Bryan and I am a registered dietitian with PEHP. So today I will be talking about the top diet trends for 2019. If you have any specific questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the chat box and we will answer them either during the webinar or I will spend some time at the end of the webinar answering any questions that you have. If you have questions that are not covered or answered today, my contact information will be available at the end of the webinar, so feel free to get in touch with me as well. Due to the nature of the presentation today, I know everyone has their own opinions and experience with different diets, but I'm asking everyone to please refrain from sharing your own personal information if you see questions come up, so we can make sure that the most accurate and most current information is shared with everyone. So let's get started today. As a dietitian, I am often asked about diets, which diets are best to follow. And I want to let everyone know that it's really important to understand that there are a variety of healthy diets that can be followed if done correctly that can result in both weight loss and health improvements. The current focus in nutrition right now is to help people develop healthy eating patterns that they can follow throughout their lifetime. So this being said, every person is different. We all have different likes and dislikes. So every eating pattern is not going to work for everyone. Not everyone's going to respond well to the same diet plan. So if you have friends or colleagues that are trying a diet and you try it, it may not work well for you and it may not be the best plan for you, and that's okay. And I think it's good for people to understand that before they start something. The other thing I would recommend before you jump in and follow maybe the latest diet trend is that you first find out a few things about it. Is there any research to support the diet and the claims that are being made? Find out, where did the diet originally originate from? Who created the diet plan? Do they have any qualifications? Are they trying to sell you something in order for you to follow the plan? So just some things to consider. As we go through this today, I want to make this very clear that I'm not promoting any one specific eating pattern, but what I want to do is provide you with the where, how, and why regarding each of these diet plans, and then let you decide if any of these meal plans will help meet your nutritional needs and help meet your long-term health goals. So as we go through this today, maybe none of these diet plans are right for you. There are a lot of different diet plans available, but it's important to always ask yourself these three questions when you're selecting an eating pattern. First is it practical for your current lifestyle? Will you feel satisfied? And will it help you to create lasting change? So just keep that in mind as we go through this today. If you do a quick search on the internet, it's pretty easy to find the top trends for 2019. And I would be pretty surprised if most of you have not heard and or tried several of these that I have listed on here today. So these will be the four main diets that I'm going to review today. The ketogenic diet is the one I get the most questions on right now, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that one, but I will cover the other diets in detail also. So the plan today is I will cover the history of these diets, if there's any research available, some of the benefits and precautions to be aware of, and then how are some safe ways to implement some of the strategies that are suggested by these diets. And then I will give you my overall kind of thought and conclusion on each of these diets based on the research that is currently available. So the ketogenic diet, as we look at this, just a brief history on this diet. This diet actually originated from fasting. So fasting has been used for a lot of years. In the early 1900s, fasting was actually used to treat seizures that were associated with epilepsy, specifically with little kids. So they would have these children fast for several days and notice that the seizures would reduce or be eliminated completely. At this same time, the picture in here on this slide here is a picture of, his name is Bernard McFadden, and he was living in New York City. He was a fitness guru, and he was really touting in his magazine that he was publishing that fasting from anywhere from 3 days to 3 weeks could cure all sorts of ailments and diseases that people had. So people were looking at fasting, seeing how they could use it. Around 1921, some doctors actually discovered that if people were on a very, very low carbohydrate diet and a high fat diet, that it would actually produce the same results as someone that was fasting. So I have, based on that research in the early 1920s, what the diet looked like that they put children on. And as we go through the keto diet, you'll see the recommendations are very similar to that still today. When children were following this diet, they found 52% of them had complete control over their seizures, and 27% of them had improved control. Obviously, modifying the diet is a lot easier than fasting, and this diet plan was actually used for about 2 decades to help treat children. After that time, new drugs were developed that were able to be used, and so the ketogenic diet wasn't used for several decades. Kind of the popularity, I was wondering where this came from recently and why it's become so popular. In 1993, there was actually a little boy by the name of Charlie. He had uncontrollable seizures. He had tried lots of different medications. It wasn't working, so his parents took him to Johns Hopkins Hospital for treatment. And he was put on a ketogenic diet, and they say within a couple of days, he was completely free of these seizures. So this is a picture of him. He's actually a preschool teacher now. He's off the diet and hasn't had any seizures for many, many years. So the story of Charlie actually was aired on Dateline, and it brought some new interest back to the ketogenic diet. His father formed the Charlie Foundation to help parents and doctors be more aware of this treatment because it hadn't been used for such a long time. The Atkins diet was introduced about 1970. It's a form of a keto diet as well, and its popularity has kind of come and gone, but it's been very prevalent, I think, in the news and in research for many years. More recently, in 2012, there was another doctor, and he actually was interested in the ketogenic diet specifically for weight loss. So he put a large number of people on a full liquid, high-fat diet and found people had quick weight loss. There wasn't a lot of complications. They were on the diet for about 6 to 12 months, most of them. And so a lot of this, along with celebrities right now, books, the internet, testimonials from people have found, I think it's kind of what generated so much interest in the ketogenic diet. So to kind of go into the details of this, there are actually several versions of the keto diet. So the standard ketogenic diet that most people will follow and are familiar with is kind of broken down on this image here. It's very low carb, moderate protein, and then high fat. So a few different versions that people can do after they've been following the standard ketogenic diet for a little while. You can do a cyclical keto diet where you follow the keto diet for 5 days, and then you have 2 days of high carb diets. More of a targeted diet where you can add carbs around workouts, which is good for people that do a lot of high intensity training. And then some people will transition to a little bit higher protein diet, which is more similar to the Atkins diet. So different versions that are available. If we compare the standard keto diet to the current kind of standard American diet, you can see biggest difference here, the amount of carbs that people are getting from their diet and the percentage of fat as well. So I wanted to break this down so you could see those percentages in actual grams. So right now in the US diet, people are consuming roughly about 250 grams of carbohydrates per day. When you look at the keto diet, the recommendation is to be anywhere between 20 and 50 grams of carbohydrates. So you can see it's drastically lower. Protein's about the same, and then the fat is going to be much higher on the keto diet versus the typical American diet. So to kind of put this into perspective, when we look at what is 20 to 50 grams, these are some common foods that are consumed in a typical American diet. And you can see if you're trying to stay around 20 grams, it's going to be very, very difficult to include probably any of these in your diet. If you're going higher to 50, maybe include a little bit of these, but it does eliminate quite a bit of the processed food that a lot of Americans typically eat in their diet. The whole premise of the keto diet, excuse me, is to put you into a state of nutritional ketosis. So traditional diet, if you look at this diagram here, you can see when you eat a diet that's higher in carbohydrates, your blood glucose levels rise, insulin is secreted, insulin moves glucose into your cells so that that can be used to help generate energy for the body. When you're on a higher fat diet and lower carbs, your glucose levels are going to fall, but you still need a way to generate energy for the body. So this is done by an enzyme called lipase. Its job is to release stored triglycerides, which are a form of fat. The fats travel to your liver, the liver produces ketones, and those ketones are then used to generate energy. For most people, the process takes about 3 days to enter into nutritional ketosis. If you're exercising or fasting, sometimes you can enter that state a little more quickly. A question I'm often asked is nutritional ketosis dangerous? And I looked into the research on this, and I think there's a little confusion. People may confuse nutritional ketosis with diabetic ketoacidosis, which is very dangerous and life-threatening, typically for people that are type 1 diabetic or they're type 2 and they're taking insulin or other oral medications. So I wanted to point this out. If you look at this graph here on the far right-hand side, you can see there's 3 specific blood levels that are looked at that we monitor with ketoacidosis. So with that, you can see glucose levels are very, very elevated. Insulin levels are very low, if present at all. And then ketone body concentration is very high. When all 3 of those situations are present, we see that the pH of the blood enters into a slightly acidic condition, which is very, very dangerous. When we look at the ketogenic diet, say glucose is normal, insulin levels are normal, the keto body concentration is a little elevated, but it does not put you at risk for ketoacidosis because all those numbers are fairly normal. So based on the research that I was able to find, they show there is no significant acid-base safety issues following a nutritional keto diet into nutritional ketosis. That being said, we don't have long-term studies on this, so it's something that is still being watched, but as of right now, we don't see any concerns for that. The research that is available currently on nutritional ketosis is short-term. So about up to 2 years, there is well-established data for a lot of this information. If you look at this chart I have on the screen here, you can see this is how many studies were being published on the ketogenic diet, which was hardly anything until close to the year 2000. The last couple of years, we've seen a lot of studies being done in different areas of this. So hopefully in the years to come, we'll have some more research to help support some of these claims that are being made. So right now, short-term data does show the following health benefits of being in a state of nutritional ketosis. A lot of people are doing this diet to help with weight management. It does show decreased hunger, increased satiety, some benefits with insulin sensitivity. So a lot of the research I was able to find was actually looking at it with type 2 diabetes. But again, I want to caution everyone, this looks great, hopefully it is great, but again, the research is short-term, and typically we like to look at research over several years to look at a large amount of data to gather this information. So a couple of precautions to be aware of regarding this diet. First one I mentioned, there is not any real good long-term data available specifically for weight loss, for management with other neurological issues, or with type 2 diabetes. The other one that I think is probably most prevalent to make people aware of is this is a diet that's very difficult for most people to sustain over a long period of time. Most of the data is actually suggesting after 6 to 12 months, it's probably best, because people are having a difficult time maintaining it longer than that, to transition slowly to a healthier, more sustainable eating pattern. You may have heard of the keto flu if you're familiar with this diet at all. The keto flu is something many people experience during the first week when they're making a transition to a very low carbohydrate diet. The reason for this, the symptoms are similar to a flu. So you get headaches, some people get nauseated, very fatigued, And the reason they believe this happens is because most people become dehydrated and they experience low levels of sodium. So in order to counterbalance this and kind of prevent some of this from happening, it's really, really recommended that you get plenty of water and that you're actually adding in extra sodium initially to help balance that out. And a lot of times that can reduce the symptoms or prevent them completely. Some other precautions I've came across in the research were exercise intolerance. A lot of people develop constipation because there's low fiber intake. Some people have bad breath due to the ketones being exhaled. And then there could be long-term adverse effects that we're keeping an eye on, such as fatty liver, kidney stones. And then if we're completely avoiding some of the main food groups, there could be vitamin and mineral deficiency. So if this is something you're trying right now or you're thinking of trying, I would recommend taking a good, well-rounded, balanced vitamin and mineral supplement to make sure that you're getting all the nutrients that you need. Some specific contraindications. So if you have any of these medical conditions, I would recommend not trying this diet. If you want to try it, you need to work with your doctor to avoid any potential complications. So some of these are a for sure no. If you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, this does need to be strictly supervised with your doctor so that you don't take too much insulin and cause low blood sugar levels. So look through this list and see if any of these relate to you and just be aware of them and be cautious of them. So if we look at the diet, if you're thinking of doing this, I just want to go through a healthier way to maybe follow this based on people that I have worked with and heard stories about how people are implementing the keto diet, which may not be the healthiest way. So if you look at a 2,000 calorie diet, you don't necessarily need to track calories on this diet, but I think for as far as meal planning and creating a balanced plan, it's good to have an estimated amount of calories so you can determine how much fat, carbohydrates, and protein you need. So this would be roughly how much you would need that would fall in the recommendation. If you were following a 2,000 calorie diet, I would recommend taking time to plan out your meals. Find a good app that you can use that will show you the distribution of these different nutrients so you make sure you're following the right range. I would highly advise not going below 20 grams of carbs. It can cause more problems then. It's not going to accelerate weight loss. Try and include all of the food groups when you're doing this. It may be hard to get in some of the grains, but there are some products available that can work. And then when you're looking at fats in the diet, since that's the basis of this diet, my recommendation is to include more healthy types of fats and still try and limit the amount of saturated fat that you're getting. When I've been doing Healthy Utah testing sessions this year, especially with the increase in people on this diet, I have seen several people have very high levels of cholesterol based on some of the food choices they're making on this diet. So some people are more sensitive to others, but try and include some healthy fats, and I will review those options as well. So when you're looking at your carbohydrates and you're trying to keep those in the 20 to 50 gram range, the recommendation, instead of looking at total grams of carbohydrates in a product, is to look at the net grams of carbohydrates. And some people recommend this and some people don't. My recommendation is to look at the net carbs. It allows for a little bit higher levels of fruits and vegetables in your diet. And the reason for this is because all of the carbohydrates that you consume are not going to affect your blood glucose levels the same. So when you look at a food label, what you want to look to see is if the food you're consuming contains any dietary fiber, which will usually be your fruit, vegetables, and grains, and then look to see if it contains any sugar alcohol. So usually sugar alcohols are going to be found in some of your sugar-free products. So both dietary fiber and sugar alcohol are going to have minimal effects on your blood glucose levels. So you simply need to take the total carbohydrates minus both of those from there to get a net carb. And then again, try and keep your total carbs between 20 and 50 milligrams is the recommendation. In planning this, I would look at how to spread out your 3 macronutrients. So your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fats Decide if you want to have 3 meals a day, if you're going to have 3 meals and 2 snacks, and plan out a balance of each of those throughout the day. I think it's really important to start with the vegetables. You're going to have limited amount of grains, and so veggies are a great way to get increased amounts of fiber in your diet, which can help reduce the risk of constipation. So this shows you the net carbs in about 1 cup of each of these vegetables. So you can see if you're between 20 and 50 grams a day, you can actually consume quite a bit of these veggies and still have a good balanced diet. If you look at these, most of these vegetables are vegetables that grow above the ground, which makes it a little bit easier when you're selecting them. The vegetables that grow below the ground are going to be a little bit higher in carbohydrates, but usually I tell people, instead of completely cutting them out of your diet, if you can't have a cup of carrots, but you really like carrots, maybe just have a smaller serving size and then you can still include that. So it's helpful not to have an all or nothing approach when you're looking at some of these. Fruits are a little more challenging because fruits are naturally sweet, which means they're going to have a little bit higher sugar content in them. I would recommend trying to get some fruit in your diet every day, though, with this plan. The easiest way to do this is going to be to include berries in your diet. Berries are naturally a little bit lower. Blueberries are a little bit higher. Again, this is net carbs per 1 cup for most of these. So you can see you could get fruits, the strawberries, the raspberries, or the blackberries, and still stay within your plan. Some of the other fruits, excuse me, are going to be a little bit higher, but again, if you really like some of these, if you love watermelon or you love cantaloupe right now, just have a little bit smaller serving size. If you had half a cup, you're looking at about 3.5 grams, which can easily fit into your plan. This is just a reference. If you want to download this presentation, you can. It just gives you some more guidance on how many carbs are found in some of the more common fruits. So the next thing I want to focus on are healthy fats. So I mentioned instead of focusing on getting a lot of your fats from saturated fats, focus on getting more from the monounsaturated, which mostly come from plants, and then the polyunsaturated, and focusing on the omega-3 fatty acids that you get from some of your fatty fish products, and then seeds like chia or flax seeds. When you're looking at saturated fat, some of the healthier options are going to be more the whole fat dairy products, like a full fat Greek yogurt or cheese. Even cottage cheese would be a good option for your fats. So if you're looking at fat, if you're, again, a 2,000 calorie diet, you're looking around 165 grams of fat a day. So instead of just adding a lot of butter or a lot of bacon or sausage, which are going to be higher in saturated fat, look through the list, find some healthy fat options, and it's really not that difficult to add healthy fats in and have an overall well-balanced amount of fat that are coming from healthier sources. So I put together just a very basic, easy meal plan that would fall in the recommended percentage for each of these. If you look through this, you can see these are mostly healthy fat options. I have some dairy included in here, a couple servings of fruit, healthy fats, a lot of leafy greens, some vegetables, salmon. And when you look at this, this comes out to be about 70% fat, 23% protein, and about 7% carbohydrates. And I'm right around the 2,000 calorie range. So it's possible with a little bit of planning to create a very balanced, healthier meal plan if you were following the keto diet. There are one good thing I think with some of the popularity of some of these diets is that you can find a lot of options at the grocery store to help make this a little more sustainable. So I just listed a few on here. I would recommend spending some time in the grocery store to see what's available. That can make sticking to this a little bit easier, and there's lots of healthier options online that you can make at home yourself. So just in conclusion with this diet, there is research to show that it helps with weight loss. Usually you see quick weight loss, a little bit of water weight, at least in the short term, but again, a little bit of caution as we're waiting for more research to come out on some of these claimed health benefits. Again, take time to plan your meals. when you get to the 6 to 12 month mark, if you're still on this diet, try and find a way to transition slowly to a healthier eating pattern. And if you need to, please work with your doctor so that this can be done in a healthy manner. The Atkins diet is another type of ketogenic diet, like I mentioned. The biggest difference with this is it allows for more protein, and then the carbs slowly increase over time, which makes this diet a little bit more sustainable. So the Atkins diet has changed a little bit over the years. I just wanted to make you aware of that. The next diet I'm going to cover is the intermittent fasting. This is gaining popularity. I have quite a few people ask me about this one as well. And fasting has been used for different reasons for many, many years. A lot of times it's used in different cultures or for different religious purposes. There's different versions of fasting now, but really with intermittent fasting, the emphasis on this is when you eat versus what you're eating. And so I'll go through some of the specifics on some of these different plans here. Most of the research and the idea behind intermittent fasting and fasting in general is the different metabolic changes that occur in the body. So if we're always feeding, always eating, and we don't allow our bodies a little bit of rest or fasting, typically our insulin levels stay elevated. We're not able to use some of our stored fat if we're always eating. So you can look at this diagram a little bit later, but it has some good information on some of the different metabolic changes that occur when our body is in a fasting state. There are currently 3 popular ways to do this. The most popular way for intermittent fasting is called the 16-8 method. It's also called the Lean Gains protocol, which is really pushed by different people in the athletic field that are trying to gain lean muscle mass. There's an eat-stop method where you fast for 24 hours once or twice a week, and then you eat normally the other days, or the 5-2 diet, which you consume 500 to 600 calories on 2 different days during the week, and then you eat normally the other 5 days. So the idea behind this diet is because you're limiting the time that you're eating, that you will create a calorie deficit over the course of the week, which can help with weight loss. It's just kind of a summary of some of the different types of fasting regimens that have been used over time for different reasons if you want to review that later on your own. So just a quick overview of the 16-8 method. So basically you're fasting for 16 hours and then you would eat for the other 8 hours of the day. The recommendation with this method is to pick those 8 hours during the day that are going to work best with your schedule. If you're not someone that likes to eat breakfast in the morning, maybe eating from noon to 8 p.m. would be best. If you get up early, maybe you want to eat from 9 to 5 p.m. I usually recommend for people to look at your work situation, your family life, your social times, and find the time that's going to work best for you. During the times that you are eating, this diet doesn't give specific recommendations on exactly what to eat, but my recommendation would be to pick nutrient-dense whole foods and beverages during this time. If you're binging and overeating a lot of junk food, then obviously it's going to kind of negate most of the benefits that you've had during the fasting period. So the intermittent fasting, there is a lot of research on it, but when you look at the research, most of it is animal-based, and there are only a few really good human studies so far to support some of the research on this. So the limited research available shows it is helpful for weight loss. We're seeing some improvements in cholesterol levels. It can be healthy for the microbiome as well, as we're giving our gut a chance to rest during those fasting periods. And then some improvements in fasting glucose. But with this one, the research that still needs to be done is really identifying what time of day is best for fasting. Are some of these different protocols going to have better results? We need bigger sample sizes and more structure in this. So I think the research on this is still going to be a few years out before it can, I think, substantiate some of these claims that are being made. Some of the benefits of this type of a diet, it does allow for flexibility. It's not super restrictive. It doesn't ask you to specifically restrict calories or eliminate foods or different food groups. It does encourage mindfulness if you practice it correctly and just being in tune with what you need during those 8 hours of when you are eating. and then giving your gut again a little bit time to rest and digest food can be beneficial. Some precautions to be aware of. You can read through some of these. The biggest one I wanted to point out, they do caution people if they've had a history of eating disorders to be careful of this because of the way the diet is set up. It can kind of mimic binge periods that people may have had, and so it can cause relapse in people that may have had a history of binge eating. So conclusion with this diet, for most people, this is going to be a pretty safe diet to follow. If you're comparing it with a healthy eating pattern, it's something that probably could be sustained for a longer period of time if you're someone that likes fasting and that works well for you. But again, biggest thing here, talk to your doctor, and then there is limited research to support some of the health claims that are being made. The next one, we're going to be over a few minutes, and I apologize. The next ones I'll go through pretty quickly on here. The Whole30 diet started in around 2009. It was actually created by two people, Doug and Melissa Hartwick. And it kind of just came about as a challenge when you read some of the information that is posted on this diet. Melissa kind of had a history of drug addiction. Once she got over that, she started going to the gym, found she was trying to be healthier, but was snacking on a lot of unhealthy things. So her and a friend decided to challenge each other to give up certain foods for 30 days to kind of reset their eating patterns. So the diet really took off in 2015 when they published a book called The Whole30. They have a lot of information on the website. This challenge specifically is not set up to be a weight loss diet. It's more of an elimination diet to help identify specific food sensitivities people may have. Maybe they have certain food cravings, but really it's not meant to be a long-term eating plan. When you do a search on the internet for Whole30, though, you'll see lots of posts of people posting before and after pictures on the weight they lost during the program. That's really not the overall goal of this program. So if you find that you have food sensitivities, they're not allergies specifically, and you're trying to determine maybe what food group is causing this, this is kind of the intention of this diet. Eliminate food groups that are known to possibly cause digestive issues, maybe skin problems. Completely eliminate them from your diet for 30 days, and then slowly reintroduce those foods back in, and then watch for some of the discomforts that were previously there. In the book or on the website, it lists specifically what you can and can't eat for the 30 days. You don't need to count calories, but you're mostly focused on making good food choices over the 30 days. So on their website, this is the kind of the list of what to eat and what to avoid for the 30 days. So some of the real positives of this program is it's based on eating whole foods, moderate amount of protein products, lots of vegetables, some fruits, and then natural fats. It is pretty strict, I would say, in what you cannot eat. You're going to need to spend some time reading food labels to make sure you're not getting any of this, because if you're really trying to avoid all of this for 30 days, it's very, very strict. If you cheat on the diet at all, then you're kind of defeating the purpose of eliminating these food products. So some of the hard things are going to be no added sugar, which is going to be a lot of all your processed foods. You're also eliminating all grains, all your beans, and all your dairy products. But there's lots of details on this. They also recommend that you do not measure your weight or any other body measurements during this time, but really just focus on eating good, healthy, whole foods. Specifically, the research to support this, I could not find any published research on the Whole30 challenge. That being said, elimination diets have been used for a long time by doctors and dietitians to identify certain conditions that can be triggered by different food groups. So I've listed some of those on here that usually elimination diets are used for. Typically with these conditions, all of those foods are not cut out for that long of a period of time. So the Whole30 is much more restrictive than some of these other elimination diets that have been used. Oh, let me go back here. So just some precautions with this one as well. So again, history of disordered eating. If you follow a strict vegetarian diet, it's going to be a little bit harder. And then again, it's not recommended to continue this challenge for longer than 30 days because of possible nutrient deficiencies. So just kind of overall opinion on this diet after looking at the research. It is a whole food-based diet, which is great, but it does eliminate some of the important food groups. A lot of people do see weight loss with it, probably because you're eliminating a lot of processed foods that people are typically eating. Not used long-term. It's not going to cure any food issues, but it can help you identify maybe some food sensitivities that you have. And again, this is a hard thing to follow. It's only 30 days, but it is a strict plan. You kind of need to be committed if you want to follow. So as long as you're not following it for more than 30 days and you go back to a healthier eating style, I would say it's not overly dangerous to try at least for 30 days, but depending on what your interest in it is, it may or may not be helpful also. So the last one I want to cover is the Mediterranean diet. So Mediterranean diet is based on food recommendations that have been consumed by people that live in the Mediterranean Sea area for many, many years. When we look at these people, we find most of these people have very low incidence of health problems. A lot of them live in these blue zones where we find people that live for the longest time. And so we're looking at these and saying, okay, what are they doing? What's different than what other people are doing? And what they found is the dietary choices that they're making. So there's not actually a prescribed Mediterranean diet per se. There is just a recommended amount or certain types of foods that should be consumed that can help create a healthy eating pattern. So Mediterranean diet, if you look at the foods to include, are good, healthy, whole food-based items. So lots of fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, olive oil, fish a couple times a week, and then kind of reducing your consumption of red meat. On the left are some foods to exclude, and I wouldn't say they need to be excluded completely, but probably limited in the diet if you're going to see the health benefits, which most of these are going to be your more highly processed foods that you see in a more American or Western type diet. So this was a Mediterranean diet pyramid that was created to help people as you're trying to figure out how to use this and create a healthy meal pattern, which I think can be very, very helpful. I liked this graph that I found in one of the research studies I was looking at because it gives a quick comparison of foods that are more prevalent in a Mediterranean diet compared to a Western diet. So you can see typical Western diet is very high in red meat, processed meat, and sweets, pretty low in some of the other food items that are higher in a Mediterranean diet. So the goal really with this diet is to transition, include some of these healthier foods in your everyday meal plans. So here's some simple ideas that are included in a Mediterranean eating style. So you can see good healthy yogurts, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, fish, chicken. So it adds for a lot of flexibility and a lot of good whole healthy food items. There is a lot of research. Sorry you can't see this very well. There is a lot of research on the Mediterranean diet. A lot of it has to do on heart disease. There's good information on it being helpful for weight loss, decreasing the risk of stroke, type 2 diabetes, certain types of cancer prevention, and then improved blood pressure. And this research is long-term, it's well documented. And so we know that following this type of an eating pattern can be very beneficial long-term to your health. So just in conclusion with this diet, each year the U.S. News and World Report ranks diets. For the last several years, the Mediterranean diet has ranked #1 out of about 41 different types of diets for the best overall diet. So again, they recommend, and from everything I've read, it's not necessarily designed for weight loss, but because you're including lots of healthy fats, you feel satisfied, not deprived, it can help with weight loss. Usually it's generally safe for everyone. There's a lot of flexibility in the eating pattern, so it's very sustainable. And again, there's a lot of research to support the health benefits of this diet. So just in conclusion, I just want to recommend again to take some time, make sure whatever diet pattern that you're interested in following is something that's going to be satisfying and sustainable to you, and it really is going to be different for everyone. So it looks like we've had a lot of questions coming in. I am recording this webinar, so I'm going to stop the recording, but I will be happy to stay on the line and answer some of these questions that are coming in. So thank you everyone for joining me today. Hopefully you're able to get a little bit more research-based information on some of these current diet trends for this year. If you do have other specific questions or you need help with creating a meal plan, please feel free to contact me at my email address that's provided on the screen here.